When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Aloe or Allbirds, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and great marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling, and for shoppers, buying, simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does online business better than Shopify. It's home of Shop Pay, the #1 checkout in the world. You can use it to boost conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going through to checkout. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income to upgrade your selling today. That's shopify.com/income.
Woman of the Hour is the stranger-than-fiction story of an aspiring actress in 1970s Los Angeles whose life intersects with a serial killer in the midst of a years-long murder spree when she's cast on an episode of The Dating Game, based on a true story and directed by Academy Award nominee Anna Kendrick. Watch Woman of the Hour, only on Netflix, October 18, rated R.
This content may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion advised.
She was shocked by her discovery and knew what it was, but had no idea who put it up there or why.
My coworkers were crowded around the area, chattering intently about something. They seemed to be in complete disbelief about something. I wish I never learned the truth.
By this time, I started to cry. I'd never been so horrified in my life.
From Killer Podcasts, true tales of horror, bizarre happenings, unexplainable events. This is Disturbed. Hello, and welcome back to the show. This week, we're bringing you 4 stories that will make your heart pound in fear. So sit back, listen closely, and dive into the horror. First, a story narrated by Dallas Stark. From Disturbed listener Macy. It wasn't paint. Thanks for submitting your story, Macy. If you have a truly horrific story all your own, submit it to us at the link in the description.
I work at Walmart, normally as a closer, so I start at 1 p.m. and work till 10 or 11 p.m. A few summers ago, I went into work and headed to the children's clothing section towards the back of the store, far from the front doors. I started zoning, which means folding clothes and sizing the clothing racks from smallest to largest. As I was working, a customer approached me to ask a question. He was just slightly taller than me, with a stocky build, tan skin, and dark blonde hair. He wore dusty jeans and a white shirt with red splotches all over it. I assumed he was a painter or a roofer and that he'd gotten paint on his shirt. He spoke calmly and asked if I knew where the trash bags were located, as well as men's t-shirts, since in his words, he was dirty after work and had to go somewhere shortly. Thinking nothing of it, I directed him to the trash bags by the electronics department and told him that the men's clothing department was in the middle of the store. He thanked me and walked away while I went back to my project. Once I was finished with my task, I headed over to the fitting room to collect my department's returns. My coworkers were crowded around the area, chattering intently about something. They seemed to be in complete disbelief about something. As I approached them, I heard the words 8 cop cars and guy in a white shirt with red stains. After asking what they were talking about, they explained that the very same man I had recently helped had gotten lost and asked another associate for directions. He said he had to hurry because he had a funeral to get ready for, if the police didn't escort him out of the store first. The associate didn't have to spend much time wondering what he meant. Before long, 4 officers charged into the store, tackled the man, and dragged him hastily out of sight. None of us knew what the situation was until the next day. A few of the associates had watched the news that night and were eager to fill us in with the details. I wish I never learned the truth. It turns out this man had been on the run for stabbing his wife 9 times and his 8-year-old son 5 times. Those red stains definitely weren't paint.
Our next story is told by Dan Groh about a nightmare-inducing haunted house.
Back in 2016, I was in a long-term relationship with a woman named Autumn, whose family lived in a small town in Connecticut. After we'd been dating for a little over a year, we drove down to her childhood home to stay for a few nights. I'd met her parents a few times, but this was my first time visiting their home, so I was a little nervous and wanted to make sure I made a good impression. She assured me everything would be fine, and I had nothing to worry about. The drive down was incredibly scenic, and the town itself was cute and colonial. We pulled up to a beautiful old 3-story house sitting on a hill overlooking a big green yard. Her parents were there to greet us, and they were very welcoming, which quickly put me at ease. They led us into an open foyer with a dark wooden staircase. The New England house was clearly very old, but in a nice cozy sort of way, and had been remodeled with some more modern touches. Autumn said we'd be sleeping in the guest room upstairs because her childhood bedroom only had a twin bed. Only then did she happen to mention that the house was sort of haunted, and that the guest room was where most of the ghost activity occurred. Perturbed, I asked her to clarify what that meant, and she said her brother had slept in the room a couple times and weird stuff had happened while he was in there. She didn't elaborate any further, and I could tell she was trying to downplay it to not freak me out. She also mentioned that pretty much everyone in her family had at least one strange experience while living in the house. When her dad was remodeling the kitchen, he was home alone working and sat down to take a break. While he was sitting in silence drinking some water, he suddenly felt a strong hand grip his right shoulder from behind. He jumped out of his chair and looked around, but no one was there. He's a completely normal, non-superstitious guy. And when I asked him about this, he said he thought a spirit was trying to warn him not to make changes to the house. Another time, Autumn was home alone with her dog watching TV downstairs. And all of a sudden, she heard loud footsteps stomping down the hall upstairs. As the footsteps continued down the hall, she swore she heard someone banging on the walls as they slowly approached the top of the staircase. Her dog ran to the bottom of the stairs and started barking like crazy. She ran to the foot of the stairs and saw nothing. So she grabbed her phone and the dog and ran outside. She called her parents and then the police while watching the house from the sidewalk. She could see both entrances to the house, and there was no way a person could jump out of a 2nd-story window without breaking their legs. The police searched the place and found no one, so her family chalked it up to a ghost. There had been smaller, spooky occurrences as well, such as the attic door closing on its own. Even if they put a chair in front of the door when they go up there to get something, they'll come back downstairs to find the door closed. For some reason, that bothered me the most, and I refused to go up there. That first night, Autumn and I were settling down to go to bed in the guest room, and I felt unnerved by the lighting in the room. Something about it felt slightly off and uncanny. it was somehow very bright and dim at the same time. I figured I was just tired, and we climbed into bed and slowly drifted off to sleep. At some point in the night, a strange woman appeared in my dreams. She was violently angry and addressed me directly. She showed me people in my life that I loved: Autumn, my family, my friends. Then she started putting broken glass into their gums and scraping it against their teeth. I was frozen in the dream and couldn't react. She told me she was going to torture and kill everyone I cared about. She promised me that everything she said was very real. I desperately tried to wake up, mentally struggling against whatever grip she had on me. Finally, I woke to find myself in bed, sitting in the darkness. I panted, trying to catch my breath. Suddenly, the woman appeared before me again and screamed, "You will never escape!" I woke up, for real this time, bolt upright, screaming and violently shaking. This woke Autumn, and she immediately tried to calm me down, asking what was wrong. I started crying as I tried to recount to her what had just happened and how viscerally real and horrifying it was. She reassured me that it was just a dream, and I slowly started to calm down a little. I was genuinely afraid to go back to sleep, but somehow I managed to nod off again and made it to the morning without another incident. We stayed at the house in the room a couple more times over the years, and I never had a dream like that again. You could probably chalk it up to the power of suggestion. Being in a new place, being told that the guest room had ghost activity. But that is the only time in my life that I've ever had a true night terror or woken up screaming. I've never had another dream that even approaches that level of intensity. I honestly don't know what to make of it. Perhaps it was just my brain freaking out. But as a first-timer in that house, it felt like a warning.
You're listening to Disturbed. We'll be right back.
Fever, cough, congestion. When the symptoms keep coming, but you've got to keep going, you can rely on Mucinex Fast Max All-in-One. Just one dose of Mucinex Fast Max All-in-One relieves up to 9 cold and flu symptoms, helping you get on with your day. Need cold and flu relief? Get Mucinex Fast Max All-in-One and Done Relief. It's comeback season. Use as directed.
With Ring cameras and doorbells, it's easy to keep every fright in sight. See who's there. Keep your scaredy cats company.
Oh, it's okay, sweetie. I'll be home soon.
And protect your crypt from the real monsters.
Oh, come on. The sign says take one.
Find dead simple ways to stay connected right now at ring.com.
Welcome back. The next story comes from Reddit user SandZachGuy, narrated by Kim Andrews. Black magic sea here found at home while cleaning.
My mum and grandma told me this story, which took place 20 years ago when my mum was pregnant with one of my sisters. My mum was very weak at the time and could barely do anything on her own, so she called my grandma and asked her to help clean the flat, as my dad was typically at work all day. So my grandma got to work cleaning my parents' flat, even though she herself was very stressed at the time. Recently, her 2 other kids, my uncle and aunt, who were still teenagers, had been fighting like never before, raising hands at each other and all that. It was really, really bad. One even bruised the other so badly that they threw up. So at the time, home was really chaotic for my grandma. My grandpa was also working all day every day, so she mostly had to deal with the altercations by herself. My grandma is an extreme perfectionist when it comes to cleaning, so she really cleaned every bit of the home. As she was dusting in the living room, She removed a clock from the wall to dust the top of it, and a tiny sphere of aluminum foil fell from the back of the clock. She was surprised by this and thought it strange, but just threw it away. She continued cleaning, but couldn't stop thinking about the ball of foil and wondering why it was up there. Eventually, she was curious enough that she took it out of the bin and opened the foil sphere. Inside the tiny ball, she found human fingernails, hair, leather with Arabic writing on it, and even quicksilver. The quicksilver fell onto the table and shattered, spreading everywhere. She said there was nearly no way to collect it all again, but being the meticulous cleaner that she is, she somehow managed to collect it. She was shocked by her discovery and knew what it was, but had no idea who put it up there, or why, or what she should do with it. She called her mum and asked what to do with it, and my great-grandmother advised her to flush it down the toilet. Time went by, and my grandma noticed that my uncle and aunt weren't having those outrageous fights anymore. She thought that the newfound harmony in her home was somehow linked to the little sphere she found. But who did it? I don't know how it came up, but eventually, a relative from my dad's side confessed that they were responsible. The aluminum sphere was a piece of black magic, also known as sihr in Islam. Apparently, this little sphere was supposed to keep together the family of the person who placed it, but in turn, sacrificed the peace of another household. The quicksilver symbolized the forced family bond of the person who placed it behind the clock. Sihr is a really scary topic, especially because it usually comes from people close to you. Black magic is forbidden in Islam. If you use it for your own good, it sacrifices another's happiness. Stay far away from it, and stay safe.
Our final story is narrated by Terra Ashe from disturbed listener Megan. Demon in the Flesh.
Before I start this story, I want to make it known that I'm a Christian. It's a vital part of my story. In June of 2016, I tragically lost my grandpa to suicide, and then in October of the same year, I tragically lost my ex-boyfriend to suicide. It was a lot to take in over the span of 4 months. My mental health was so severely damaged that I ended up being admitted to a place called the Hope House, as I too had started to feel suicidal. I went through the admission process and was led into my room where I could put my blankets and books. We weren't allowed many belongings at the Hope House. Just as I was getting settled, the fire alarm in the building went off. Like a herd of cattle, all of the tenants of the Hope House were being let out the front door of the facility. As I walked outside, all I could hear was a man screaming, "God, why have you forsaken me? God, why have you forsaken me?" Over and over for 30 minutes until we got the all clear to go back in the building. Those words didn't sit well with my soul. Once I was inside, I sat down at the table to color, and the man who had been screaming came and sat opposite me. His name was Zach. He looked at me for a moment and asked my name, to which I replied, "My name is Megan," and he said that it was very nice to meet me. Then, as though in a trance, he reached out both arms across the table towards me as far as he could and stared at me, frozen in place. He didn't even blink. I was trying my best to ignore him, but every time I looked at him, he just had this hollow stare and a weird look on his face. He stayed in this position for an hour, unblinking. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore, so I stood up from the table to walk away. Zach stood up with me. When I moved, he moved with me. I tried to get some of the staff's attention, and after a few minutes, I was finally successful, and they led Zach away from me. I went over to the couch to sit down to read, and suddenly I heard a strange noise coming from the kitchen area. I leaned forward to look over and saw Zach jumping up and down with his arms straight above his head. He did this non-stop for about 40 minutes, with a few utterances of "God, why have you forsaken me?" thrown in there. Just staring off into nothingness. About an hour later, we sat down to eat dinner, and Zach sat beside me, just staring at me. To say I ate quickly is an understatement, and then I quietly snuck off to my bedroom to get some sleep. I don't remember much from that night, as I was exhausted. But I do remember waking up once to the sound of my door opening and Zach peeking in before an alarm went off and a staff member came to lead him away from me. The next day, we sat down for a group therapy session. I sat down in a corner area of the couch, and Zach came and stood beside me. I did my best to ignore him, but then he reached out his hand and grabbed hold of my arm very tightly. I sat there frozen. Still to this day, I have never felt anything like it. Evil was radiating out of him, and it's like I could feel vibrations all over my body. The therapy team leader said, "Zach, please let go of Megan." But he just smiled and said, "I can't, I need her." I looked up to see him smiling down at me. My heart was racing in my chest. He started squeezing even harder, so I said, "Zach, please let go of my arm, you're hurting me." But he squeezed all the harder. I started pleading with staff members to do something. They ended up having to pry me away from his grip. A staff member then came up to me and whispered in my ear, "Go down the hall to your room and get inside. Shut the door and wait for us to tell you to come out, then quickly follow us to the main office. We will get you inside and lock the door. You will be safe." So quickly and quietly, I turned on my heels and started walking down the hall to my bedroom. There's a bathroom besides my bedroom, so I slammed that door shut and then quickly snuck into my room. Less than a minute later, I heard Zach banging on the bathroom door and repeatedly turning the handle to try to get inside. That's when I heard the words, "Megan, come on, let's go." I opened my door, and with a couple staff members following me, we ran through the building to the main office. They got me inside quickly and locked the door. As I was sitting there trying to keep my heart rate under control, the office doorknob started to wiggle, and I heard kicks and punches being made to the office door, with Zach outside screaming, "Let me in! I need her! I need Megan! Let me in now!" By this time, I started to cry. I'd never been so horrified in my life. The staff ended up having to call the police, who arrived quickly, put him in handcuffs, and took Zach to the hospital. He screamed for me as they were dragging him out of the building. Some people believe in demons, some don't. But in October of 2016, I knew I'd come face to face with a demon in the flesh. So with that said, to the demon who possessed this man, let's not meet again.
Want more Disturbed? Check out our Patreon for member-exclusive content, early merch access, and other cool perks. I'm your host, Doug Bailey, and this has been Disturbed, a production of Killer Podcasts and part of the Evergreen Network. For more paranormal and true crime shows, visit killerpodcasts.com. Follow our social channels at Disturbed Podcast on Instagram or Disturbed_pod on Twitter. If you enjoyed the show, please consider subscribing and reviewing on your favorite listening platform. Share your own true horror story at disturbedpodcast.com. Music by Epidemic Sound and by Carl Casey at White Bat Audio. Our producers are Noah Fouts and Elizabeth Flood. Our audio engineer is Nathan Corson. Executive producers Bridget Coyne and Gerardo Orlando. Until next time, stay safe out there.
Bet you didn't think this would be the year you achieved the dream of flight. iFly Indoor Skydiving lets you experience the freedom and thrill of flying. No experience or wings required. iFly is fun for people of all ages and abilities, and it's the perfect choice for a night out with friends, family birthday parties, corporate events, or even just celebrating a Thursday. You'll never forget your first time flying. Go to iFlyWorld.com and use code TAKEFLIGHT for 20% off. That's iFlyWorld.com, code TAKEFLIGHT.